Hey everybody, it's Audrey Henley here, and today we're going to be going through a glossary of publishing in the know terms. The reason I wanted to create this video was because publishing and writing tends to be sort of an occult career in that it's sort of secretive. You don't understand it until you're in it. The way people think publishing works isn't how it actually works. In a lot of movies, you'll have someone write a book in a month and then get it published. Someone thinks they're a star and they get a movie deal. Like, none of that actually happens, and the realities of publishing are very muddled and confusing. A little bit of background: I'm a young adult writer, so I've written 2 young adult novels, starting my 3rd, but I also work in publishing, so I work at a small publishing house as a production assistant. That's my background and why you might want to listen to me. Okay, so let's just go through some terms. So first I'd like to go through all of the Twitter related terms. Let's just start with Twitter. All you youngins who don't use Twitter anymore. Twitter, you probably know what the social media site is, but in the writing community, it has a presence. So Twitter is where you're gonna find agents, authors, and to a lesser extent, editors and publishers. Twitter is sort of the place where authors and agents go in order to complain about the publishing industry, in order to get really excited, like, oh, my client's book is coming out today, or they'll talk about really important topics such as diversity in publishing, questions and issues that the publishing community has to deal with as a whole. A lot of that discussion happens on Twitter, and I'd really recommend every writer getting a Twitter. It can be a stressful medium, but I don't think there's a match as far as getting in the know knowledge. And then I'm going to talk about some related terms. A big one is hashtag writing community. That is the hashtag people use when they first start on Twitter, and they're like, oh hey, I'm new to Twitter, like I'm looking for to connect with other writers, and then they get, like, you know, 200 followers right away. Writing community is just sort of the catch-all when you want to target anyone in publishing or writing specifically. Twitter pitch contests. The big one is PitMad, and that's where you'll see people condensing their entire book into a tweet, and you'll see a bunch of hashtags, and agents will heart that tweet, and if they heart that tweet, you can go ahead and send them a query. There's sort of this understanding that they will process your query a bit faster than they normally would because they've already shown interest in your project just based on the premise alone. And another similar thing is DVpit. That is pretty much the same as PitMad, but DVpit is trying to attract writers who are able to write from a background that hasn't traditionally been published a lot. So that can be a disabled community, marginalized communities of any sort, race, socioeconomic status, and also like LGBT communities. So DVpit is for those sort of communities, marginalized communities, to specifically pitch. And I think agents really pay attention to this one because they're trying to build a more diverse client list. In those Twitter pitch contests, you'll often see a lot of hashtags and a lot of people just, or not even hashtags, but often just little abbreviations. So you'll see YA, MG, and PB. So those stand for age categories. So YA is young adult, MG is middle grade, PB is picture book. And those are the main ones, or just A for adult. So if you see, I think YA is the most common, and MG is pretty common too. But when people want to say young adult on Twitter, they often just type YA. So that's a good segue point into Bookstagram, which is Instagram for books. This isn't always writer-based. A lot of Bookstagrammers, or we'll just rope BookTube in here too. Both just other social media sites that writers often turn to, and they're good spots for you. So if you really can't deal with the drama on Twitter, because honestly it gets to to be a hellfire sometimes, you can try Bookstagram. A lot of the times it's just pictures of books, and then there'll be a really long, almost blog post like description on the photo that isn't actually about the photo at all. It's like, well, I'm reading this book and it's been cold here lately in New Hampshire and I just love getting cozy with a cup of tea. And then there's always a question at the end like, what do you guys do to relax? BookTube, Bookstagram, do it. Okay, so I wanted to go through the difference between age category and genre. So a lot of people will say the young adult genre, and this is very incorrect, and it's something you definitely want to avoid in your query or in any engagement online. Age category is the intended audience. So for young adult, it is often read by women in their 20s to 30s, but the intended traditional audience is still teens. For that audience, it's young adult. That's the age category of the intended audience. Genre would be like science fiction or contemporary, mystery, thriller, all of those things, but you can't call young adult a genre because it's not. And a lot of people will think like, oh, just Twilight and Hunger Games. They're the same thing. Those are two popular books with a certain speculative feel. That's not representative of all YA. There's some really excellent contemporary YA that has zero reference to fantasy elements. There's no dystopian elements. There's no anything. It's just straight up contemporary. You can't describe this age category as a genre. It just doesn't work, and there's so many young adult books published every year that it doesn't make sense, and it makes you look like you are trivializing it. And you could say the same thing about middle grade and chapter books. I just happen to be really in tune to the YA community. Okay, let's go back to basics. So I wanted to talk about agent. A literary agent is someone who you bring forth your work to them. You say, I think this book would be a good fit for you. The literary agent then is your representative to the publisher. And here's why this happens. So we have an acquiring editor at a publishing house. And that acquiring editor has to come up with a list of books every year to acquire, to bring into the publishing house, to basically buy the rights for it. And if he was getting, like, imagine all the queries that go to agents went to that editor, most of his time would be spent reading queries. So agents are sort of a middleman. And as bad as that sounds, they also perform a lot of other key roles. They negotiate contracts, and they know what legalese to use to ensure that you get the best deal. So they think of all these things that authors, as not very business savvy people in general, don't think about. And I think you see that self-published authors in general tend to be a lot better at the business side of things, and I think there's a reason for that. Like, at least self-published authors that, you know, go on to sell many units, they're good at business. But I think for a lot of authors who just want to be focused on the writing, that business side is stuff they want to avoid like the plague, okay? So agents help you do that. They look at your contract, they're like, nope, nope, nope. How many books? Are they just buying this book, or are they buying some mystery next book you're going to write too? So agents will help negotiate that for you and sort of act as a lawyer type figure there. They'll also sort of stand up for you at the publishing house. So let's say you really want to spell the word gray with an E because you think it's prettier. This isn't like me or anything. It actually is. I love gray spelled that way. I think I would fight for that. I would fight a copy editor for that. So let's say I have a book deal and I'm like, I need gray spelled with an E in my book, and that's it, and that's it. So then I would talk to my agent and they would talk to the publisher and deal with all that. And then the nice relationship between the editor and the author is still maintained because you never talk about that icky stuff. It's just the agent who talks about the icky stuff. So you get to leave your hands clean and just worry about writing your next project. So agents are super handy. Okay, so how do agents get paid? They get commission off of your sale. Agents don't make money until they sell a book. They don't make any money reading queries. Zero money. Like, they don't owe authors anything at that point. This is a good term to know. The button chair technique. So this is an invaluable technique for any writer, and the button chair technique is writing with your button in a chair and not letting yourself get up and just writing. This is just a fun one to know. You know, if someone's like, how did you write 2,000 words that day? You'd say, I used the button chair technique. I forced myself to sit down and be in front of my computer. There might have to be like an addendum, like a phone turned off technique or something. That would be good. Trunking or shelving a novel. So this is when you decide that you no longer want to continue revising a manuscript. So you shelf it, you stick it on a shelf and leave it alone, or you trunk it. Like, I don't really get that one, like you put it in a trunk, I guess. So I use shelve it more often, but I hear both. Shelving a manuscript is letting it sit and working on something else. Oh, this is a good one. Plotter versus pantser. I first heard this at a conference and I was like, what are these weird words? And now I hear them all the time. So a plotter is someone who writes outlines before writing a novel, or during, you know, but the idea is they're plotting their book before they write it. Pantsers write by the seat of their pants. So they kind of just have an idea in their head, don't bother outlining, and just go ahead and write their feelings out on paper. So here's a term for you, the industry. When people say that, they mean publishing. The thing to realize here is that publishing is an industry. So the Big Five is 5 huge publishing houses that control the market in the US for the most part. So if you're trying to get published in young adult, you'll see that there are 5 major publishers, a few smaller like mid-sized publishers, so like Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, hopefully I'm saying that, HMH, but they just don't happen to be part of the Big 5 conglomerates. So those are like where most people want to sell, because you're gonna have a good chance of getting in Barnes & Noble across the country. This isn't a dream factory, this isn't Willy Wonka. They're not here to make writers' dreams come true. Publishers are there to make money at the end of the day. R&R, or revise and resubmit. So this is when you've queried an agent and they've requested usually a full, or it could be a partial, like 50 pages of your manuscript. And at this point, they've read it and they really enjoyed it. You don't get to this point if an agent hasn't loved your writing, but they'll read it and see some serious flaws, and they want you to go back and revise your story and then resubmit it to them. Sometimes these are exclusive, where the agent will ask you to please revise it and, you know, pull it from other agents and just submit this manuscript to me because I'm taking time to give you extensive notes. Sometimes they'll just give you notes out of the kindness of their heart. They do this because they think it's worth the potential for you to revise your story in a really strong way. They think it's worth it. They think you're worth it as a writer, and that if you can make these revisions they're asking for, they'll probably want to snatch up your story. So I wouldn't say it like, this isn't a 90% chance that if you slapdash some revisions, you know, they'll offer representation. It's more, I've heard like a 30% number thrown around. So these are authors who do make extensive revisions, and this can take like 6 months to a year. Like, you really want to take the advice to heart. Author brand. This is the sort of presence you have online before you sell a book, after you sell a book. It's your presence out to the world saying, hey, I'm an author. It's your outreach to the public. My Twitter, my Goodreads, my personal website, my my very sad Bookstagram, and this YouTube channel. I consider those all part of my personal brand, and my attempts to say, hey, I'm an author, I'm legit and real, and here's me talking about books, connecting with readers and with other writers. So that's what an author brand is for. So the call. The call is when you've submitted likely a full manuscript to an agent. Like, they've requested your full and you've sent it. It's been a few months, or you know, it's been however long they've had it. And then they usually ask to schedule an appointment to call you, or they can call you out of the blue, which to me sounds terrifying. But anyway, it's when you have a call with an agent after they have your manuscript. This can be either they have a pretty extensive revise and resubmit, or it could be an offer of representation. So you really want to prepare for these calls. You want to have a list of questions for that agent. Even if it's a revise and resubmit, I think you can go ahead and ask a lot of these questions, like just to get, you have the chance to get to know this agent better. Go ahead and ask them the questions you have, because if they're offering to call you, they really love your writing, even if it's not perfect yet, and they're really interested in you and your career. So you want to take the call seriously. Just don't expect representation every time. A lot of times they're just revise and resubmits. But either way, it's really encouraging because it shows that they care about you as a writer. Okay, so 10 to 12 business months. This is a term I just made up, but like, I thought it was relevant here. There's this term like 2 to 5 business days. You'll hear from me. You'll get your test results in 2 to 5 days. In publishing, think of it more as 10 to 12 business months. And if you don't hear within 10 to 12 business months, then you can go ahead and give up on that agent. I've queried 5 agents, I believe, and all of them got back to me. But one of them got back to me after 1.5 years. So I'd already given up on her, but I mean, it was a form rejection, as I expected. It just took her a while to send it to me. You can expect things back in 10 to 12 business months. That's a good way to look at it. And if you get an answer sooner, like, that is just extra cool. That is icing on the cake. Book tours. So there's this mythical beast called the book tour, and authors think they can just like write a book and sell it and then magically get a book tour. And I just wanted to say, like, it doesn't happen that often. This happens for like big books, like John Green. He gets a freaking like trailer and a crew and they go around and have a book tour. But I just want authors to know that this isn't a common practice. And there's a reason John Green gets it. It's because he has a huge YouTube presence. And do you have a YouTube presence like that? If not, don't expect a book tour. Another thing to think about is whether the publisher is paying for travel or the author is paying for travel. So say you get invited at Powell's in Portland, Oregon. It's a really great bookshop and they do amazing author events there. You can get invited to that and then have to pay for the traveling expenses from your home state to there by yourself without publisher support. Okay, so in advance, I'm going to say it very simply here at the beginning and then get into the little nuances a bit later. So the essential idea is that the author is getting paid from the publisher for their book, and it's in advance because they're paying it ahead of the book being published. So this is before you're actually making them any money, and then the book starts to make money and then the publisher is being paid back for that advance. So they're basically giving you money in advance is a sign of trust that they know you're going to earn that back once your book is published and sells. But it's like, you've written this book, you know, thank you for your time and effort, here's some money, and we trust that you'll earn it back. There are cases in which authors don't earn their advances back, and I believe there are cases where they've had to pay that back. Scary. So a big advance can be a lot of pressure because it's like, what if your book doesn't sell as well as they expect? What are you going to do? But at the same time, if you get a big advance, it is a clue that the publisher is going to put a lot of time and effort into your marketing strategy. So it is a good sign and it's obviously great for you. Another thing about advances is they get paid a little weird, so I think every publisher does it a little differently, and it might even vary from contract to contract, but others will get a little bit on signing, they'll get a little bit after it's published, and then a little bit later, so that's a bummer. NaNoWriMo. So NaNoWriMo stands for National Novel Writing Month, and it's November, and every November people go crazy for NaNoWriMo, and I don't really participate, but it's a good thing to know that exists. So during this month there'll be people who are staying up all night writing, trying to get 1,500 words a day, so they can have 50,000 words in a month. November is the shortest month. Why'd you pick November? Because November. It's just a thing to know about. in the writing community zeitgeist, and it's a confusing acronym, so I just wanted to include it here. Ooh, Scrivener. So Scrivener is a software program and sort of an alternative to Microsoft Word built for writers. They do have a Windows version and a Mac version. The Mac version I've heard is much better, but I just have the Windows version. It is very segmented, so you can have like different documents for all your chapters, but you can see it on a little menu on the left, and they also have like a really cool corkboard function. I actually only use it for this. Scrivener is very handy for research because you can put like all these little cards. It's very fun. It's also great if you enjoy outlining with note cards. You can do it online. So Scrivener is a great resource. It costs money. It's a thing a lot of writers use. Okay, y'all, final term is rejection. So you all have heard the word rejection before, but I just wanted you to know what it is in a publishing context. And rejection in the publishing context is an ever-present friend who is by your side all the time. And he's there when you get your first critique partner, and he's there when you get your agent, and he's there when you get a book sold, and he's there when you're working on your second book, and he's there when you're Stephen King. Rejection is there all the time. It doesn't matter how successful you get. And I just want everyone to know that it's very common to be rejected by hundreds of agents or hundreds of times before you get an agent, and then before you get a book deal. It's just always there. So look forward to that. Leave in the comments below. Please let me know if these terms made sense to you, if there's any you still have questions on, and if there's any terms you would like me to describe in a future video. I'd love to do that, so just let me know. Okay, and with that, that's all I've got for you today. So thanks for joining me. Do. Bye.